Hello friends, welcome back to biology, and of course I'm Mr. Ryan. Our subject today is macromolecules. Well, what are macromolecules? Macromolecules are organic compounds. That means they contain carbon. Macromolecules are large organic molecules. Carbon has 4 electrons in its outer shell. Carbon can form covalent bonds with as many as 4 other atoms, usually carbon itself, hydrogen, oxygen, or nitrogen. Okay? Macromolecules are large organic molecules, also called polymers. The prefix poly means many. Many what? Well, they're little building blocks in each macromolecule, and they're called monomers. Now, here are our macromolecules, and it's really important that you learn these and you learn about them and you know their monomers and you know what they do because they are very important to biology. Our 4 macromolecules we're going to talk about today are carbohydrates, which gives us energy, lipids, which stores energy, proteins, what we're made out of, and helps with chemical reactions in the body. And then we have nucleic acids, deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid, better known as DNA and RNA, and they contain our genetic information. So how do we get the monomers together? In other words, how are the macromolecules formed? The answer is dehydration synthesis. Okay, you bring the polymers together by removing water. And you see that here in this picture. We have H and HO, okay? And that's H2O. You remove the water, now the monomers come together. So how do we break the macromolecules apart so they can be separated and digested? The answer is easy. If we take water away to bring the monomers together, we can separate the monomers by adding water. And you can see that here. So we add water and the monomer breaks apart. Carbohydrates. This is the first macromolecule we're going to talk about. Carbohydrates, their monomers are these simple sugars: glucose, deoxyribose, ribose, fructose, galactose. Those simple sugars are the monomers for carbohydrates. If you notice, they all end in OSE, O-S-E, okay? So when you see a word O-S-E in biology, most likely it's going to be about sugars. Where do we find carbohydrates? Well, we find them in sugar and candy. We find them in starch, bread, potatoes. Glycogen, we find them in beef, muscle, cellulose. We find them in lettuce and corn. So here's a really good summary of carbohydrates. They are, please remember this, they are our main source of quick energy for living things. Okay, they're also involved with energy storage. For example, in animals, glycogen is stored in the liver. In plants, starch is stored in the roots, okay? They're also involved with structure, for example, to build cell walls. Again, carbohydrates and monomer are those simple sugars, glucose, fructose, what we talked about earlier. But they're the main source of energy. Our next macromolecule we're going to talk about are lipids. Lipids is a general term for compounds which are not soluble in water. They do not dissolve in water. Remember, lipids, carbohydrates, gives us quick burst of energy. The lipids stores the most energy. Examples of lipids are fats, oils, waxes, hormones, triglycerides, and phospholipids. That's very important. Lipids play a role in making up the cell membrane. So that's one word you're going to see when we talk about the cell membrane, phospholipids. So lipids are involved in our cell membrane. There are 6 functions of lipids. Again, they store energy. Okay, they protect against heat loss. They protect against physical shock. They protect against water loss. They're good for chemical messengers and hormones. And again, they are the major component of membranes in our body. Phospholipids, especially the cell membrane. Lipids, again, long-term energy storage, okay? They're involved with the cell membrane. They're involved with waterproofing. You know, it keeps water in and out of plants. They're involved with steroid hormones. Okay, those are lipids. They store energy. Now we're coming to the macromolecule protein. Protein's what we're made out of. Now, what makes up proteins? This is another important monomer, amino acids. And there's 20 different kinds of amino acids. Okay, so that's what makes up proteins. You'll hear about amino acids when the ribosomes are making protein. Okay, so make sure you understand amino acids make proteins. And here are the 6 functions of protein: storage, for example, an egg white; transport in our blood with hemoglobin; regulatory, like in hormones; movement in muscles; structural. Remember, I told you we're made of proteins, membranes, hair, nails. The list goes on and on. And also, proteins are important in chemical reactions in our bodies. That's when they're involved. That's when they are enzymes. Again, proteins, their monomer is the amino acid, and they are what we're made out of. Nucleic acid. This is our last category of macromolecules. Nucleic acids come in 2 types, DNA and RNA. And nucleic acids are composed of long chains of nucleotides. So the monomer for nucleic acids are nucleotides. And they're linked together, of course, by dehydration synthesis. Now, this nucleotide has 3 parts to it: the phosphate group, the sugar group, and bases. And when we talk about DNA and we talk about RNA, you will absolutely know these bases. They're adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, uracil. You'll learn about that. Now, here's a picture of a nucleotide. Okay, again, the phosphate, the 5-carbon sugar, and the base. Now, DNA, okay, DNA is a double helix. That means it's like a twisted ladder. Okay, when you flatten it out, you can see going up the ladder is the sugar and the phosphate. What you would walk on, the rungs, okay, that's where the bases are. So since DNA is a double helix, that means there's 2 parts that are held together. Okay, the phosphate and the sugar on this side and the phosphate and sugar on this side are held together by those bases: guanine, cytosine, thymine, adenine. Okay, so that's our nucleic acids. And what do? What's their main thing? They are to store genetic information. They transmit heredity or genetic information, okay? Remember, there's 2 types of them, DNA and RNA. And the monomer for nucleic acid is a nucleotide, which we just saw. So the polymers for carbohydrates, monosaccharides, glucose, fructose, you've seen those. The monomers for proteins, amino acids, which, you know, we'll talk about when we talk about ribosomes making proteins. Nucleic acids, it's the nucleotides, that phosphate, sugar, and a base. Lipids are not considered have no monomers. So here we go. The carbohydrates gives us quick energy. We can find them in pasta, breads, fruits, vegetables. Okay, glucose, fructose are the simple sugars. Okay, they give us quick energy. They also provide material. They also provide material to build cell membranes. Then we have proteins, which is what we're made out of, and they provide structure. They aid in muscle movement, provide immunity. They're also involved with hemoglobin in our blood. Then we have the lipids. Remember, we can find them in butter, nuts, and oil. And what do? They store energy. And then we have nucleic acids, and their monomers are nucleotides, phosphate, sugar, and a base. And what do nucleic acids do? They contain genetic information, and they also direct the growth and development of a living organization. And there's 2 of them, 2 kinds of nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. Friends, that is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, please contact me at any time. Thank you. Have a good evening.